Welcome to another episode of Primal MMA. My name is Jack and today we have yet another special episode for you. Cutting weight is a common practice among MMA fighters, and today we take a look at the weight cuts that push the limits of what was safe or what should have been allowed. One of the most common yet controversial practices of all combat sports is that of weight cutting. Oftentimes fighters will employ a method of dieting and dropping a ton of water weight in order to step on the scale at weigh-ins and meet the limit of a weight class. This allows for a perceived size advantage on fight night, as athletes are given the opportunity to rehydrate and come into the octagon at a much heavier weight than whatever they weighed in the day prior. That being said, some fighters have a tendency to push the limits on how many pounds they can drop. This has led to some serious weight cuts that cause concern to those watching. Today we take a look at some particular instances where fighters took things to the next level, nearly taking things too far. But before we dive into it, make sure you are subscribed and leave a like and comment, and I will personally reply back to you. Starting at number 10, Kenny Florian, UFC 136. An MMA legend, Florian had fought the hold down from middleweight to lightweight before deciding that it was a good idea to take on Jose Aldo. Yes, the featherweight champion Jose Aldo. The drastic weight cut really was shocking, as he resembled a skeleton on the scales. Florian had most of his success at 155 pounds, but even that was a big cut for him. Featherweight though was the next level, and his face and body were completely sunken in like a meth head. He would go on to lose the fight by unanimous decision. Number 9. Mackenzie Dern, UFC 224. When transitioning from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to MMA, there was a ton of hype surrounding Mackenzie Dern. This excitement would turn to feelings of concern as she would miss the strawweight mark of 115 pounds in 2 of her 3 professional fights. This led her to moving up in weight, competing at flyweight. Unfortunately, this would not do enough to end Dern's problem with weight cuts. After moving back down to strawweight and signing with the UFC, her second fight in the promotion would see her most egregious error to date, when she weighed in a whopping 7 pounds over the 115 pound mark. This was one of the worst weighing attempts in UFC history, but seemed to serve as a wake-up call, as she has been without error since, or at the very least, up until the point that we've made this video. Number 8. Yoel Romero, UFC 221 and UFC 225. Romero began his MMA career as a light heavyweight, but a loss to then Strikeforce champion Rafael Cavalcante sent him packing to middleweight, where he's dominated ever since. The only man to beat him in the UFC has been current middleweight champion Robert Whittaker, but Romero is beginning to face a bigger battle in his UFC career. For 2 fights in a row now, Romero has missed weight. At UFC 221, he came in at over 187 pounds, but still ended up winning that fight in a spectacular knockout over Luke Rockhold, although he got a little closer his next time around, coming in at 185.2 pounds for his title rematch with Whittaker at last weekend's UFC 225. Romero looked terrible immediately after weighing in and missing weight. He could barely stand on his own, he was in such bad shape. A move to light heavyweight seems imminent, especially considering he now has 2 losses to the middleweight champ. Number 7. Chris Weidman, UFC on Fox 2. Former UFC champ Weidman has never missed weight in his UFC career, but his octagon debut was certainly a close one. Before the Long Island native ever won the middleweight belt, Weidman was just 3 fights into his MMA career when he signed on to fight Demian Maia on short notice in 2012. The Hofstra wrestling standout had plenty of weight cutting experience in college, so Weidman was miraculously able to cut 20 pounds in 24 hours to make weight. While he did look a bit lean on fight night, Weidman still dominated Maia regardless, en route to decisive decision victory. you have got to give it to Weidman for never missing weight despite naturally weighing in at 200 plus pounds. Number 6. James the Sandman Irvin, UFC Live, Vera vs Jones. Irvin forever became synonymous with the Skeletor nickname upon weighing in for his UFC middleweight debut against Alessio Sakara back in 2010. Irvin began his career as a heavyweight, eventually capturing the WEC heavyweight title. He found mixed success at 205 pounds, but was always an exciting fighter whether he won or lost. Irvin looked absolutely emaciated for his middleweight debut, his cheeks sunken in a sickly way, his skin cast with a deathly pallor. UFC President Dana White said so himself that Irvin was a shell of himself at middleweight. Number 5. Kevin Lee, UFC 216. When Kevin Lee struggled to make weight at UFC 216, we saw just how savage this process can be. He was set to take on Tony Ferguson for the interim lightweight title, already compromised by a staph infection on his chest that he covered up with makeup to hide for the commission. Lee also had severe weight cutting issues. The first time he went onto the scales, he was over the limit and looked visibly confused by what was going on. Currently fighting at welterweight, Lee was in shocking condition, but would come back an hour later and make the 155 pound limit. He wouldn't look any healthier though. Number 4. Conor McGregor, UFC Fight Night Boston. When UFC superstar Conor McGregor was first rocketing through the promotion, he was doing so by competing at featherweight. However, these weight cuts to 145 pounds were always extremely challenging. Frankly, all of his featherweight fights could end up on this list for how poorly he looked on the scale. That being said, there is one particular event that really stood out with its brutality. When McGregor was set to fight Dennis Siver, he weighed in at his required weight limit, yet his gaunt and sunken appearance garnered a ton of negative press afterwards, leaving fans concerned to see him like that. Nevertheless, he won that fight as well as the rest of his fights at featherweight, before moving up and understandably never looking back. Number 3. Anthony Johnson, UFC 106. If you look at Anthony Johnson now, he's an absolute unit. The former light heavyweight contender fought twice for the title and was renowned for his ferocious power. You could call him the Francis Ngannou of his day. Rumble is now a professional bodybuilder, which means he's got even bigger since retirement. That makes it even crazier to imagine that he'd fought at middleweight and at welterweight previously in his career. The image of him standing on the scales at UFC 106 should be shown at anti-weight cut meetings around the world. He looks totally drained and weak. It is terrifying. Number 2. Darren Till, UFC Fight Night 109 and UFC Fight Night 130. Till has skyrocketed up the welterweight rankings and into fight fans' collective consciousness after tolling in relative obscurity on smaller UFC undercards in Europe. He's one of the best welterweights in the UFC, and his trash talk and confidence has helped to make him a recognisable name, especially after beating Wonderboy at UFC Fight Night 130 in his native Liverpool. Although it was controversial. While that fight was close, the real story here was Till's inability to make the 170 pound limit. Till came in at a whopping 174 pounds and likely rehydrated back up to around 190. Till is admittedly a huge welterweight, but he's now a top welterweight contender after beating Wonderboy, and contenders need to be able to make weight to fight for the belt. The Englishman looks gone, even missing weight by several pounds. He has talked about winning belts all the way up to light heavyweight, the implication being he's a natural 205 pounder. Let's see if he can actually make 170 pounds and win a belt there first. And finally at number 1, Khabib Nurmagomedov, UFC 254. Khabib had no issue inside the octagon when he submitted Justin Gaethje to retain his UFC lightweight title, before announcing his retirement from the sport for good. The champion, though, had a number of issues getting down to the 155 pounds weight limit ahead of the fight. Despite standing at 5 foot 10 inches, Khabib had historically struggled to make the weight and reportedly has had as much as 40 pounds to cut before fights. He has always remained a consummate professional and put in the graft to ensure he always hits the scales bang on weight. However, footage released by The Eagle showed him literally sweating out the last few kilograms. Wearing a sweatsuit whilst riding a bike is a surefire way to lose the final few pounds, but Khabib and his team have to go further and douse the champion in towels while he remains wrapped in layers. Khabib practically wilts in the hotel room under the duress and has to be helped to his feet by his training partners, and it makes for uncomfortable viewing. So, that is it for the deadliest weight cuts in UFC history. Please let us know what you think about our picks and on which fighters we should do a video next. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to subscribe and leave a comment saying I subscribed, and I will personally reply to your comment. We've got 3 new videos coming out every week, so see you in our next video where we will bring you the latest MMA facts.